we're now going to enter the Making an Artist Talk portion of our program. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the amazing Beau McCall.
Good morning, good morning. I am Beau McCall. I am a button artist. I'm originally from Philadelphia. I started this many moons ago with the jar buttons in my mom's basement, and I'm sure some of you have the jars or the cigar boxes or the little blue cookie tin full of buttons. Before I actually got to the button, I did many things creatively which did not stick. And every couple weeks or a couple months, you know, I asked my mom to get me different supplies to do different things, and it just didn't last. So as I got older, I ran into a jar of buttons in the basement. Just an idle jar, you know, most of those jars are just memory jars. You know, you pop a button, you put it in a jar, and it's thread in those jars, it's change in those jars, thimbles, all kind of crazy stuff, right? And I had iron in the basement, and it was a shelf right here. The jar was on the shelf, like this jar right here. And it was almost like I was having a conversation with this jar, not knowing where I was going to go and what it was going to lead to. And I started playing with the jar, and my mom went out and bought this sweater. Let me start with the slides before I get carried away. So, slide number 1. Is that so far? Here. Okay. So this is slide number 1, and this slide is, I'm talking about the importance of art in school, art education. Because a lot of schools, they don't do that anymore. Art and music. It's kind of obsolete right now. So when I was coming up, I like to call my talent homegrown. Most of the stuff I learned in public housing, in our little apartment in the projects, and after school programs and summer camp programs. This is a trip to one of the museums in Philadelphia. That's me, the cute one on the end. This was Scott, that was our counselor, and I enjoyed those programs. At that time, I was really shy, and art seemed to comfort me in some kind of way, so I was addicted early on. Next slide. This is me in high school. This is Miss Jones. Prior to going to Miss Jones's art class, I was in this business class with Mr. Houck, and this is way back when. And everybody in the class got a job, and he said whatever you were, your minimum wage was at your job that you had through the class. That's what you were worth. And I think I was making $1.35 an hour. I was like, he must be crazy because I'm worth way more than $1.35. So I was insulted by that, and I went to Miss Jones and I explained to her what happened, and I told her that, you know, I was a creative and she had room for me in her class, and she accepted me in her class. I was not good with a pencil or a paintbrush. I was more of a craft person. So she sat me down, we had a long conversation. I don't know what it was about me that she believed in me, but the whole class was doing one thing, and I was doing this hook rug thing that she got me all these materials to do. And she entered me in the Gimbals. They had a citywide art talent show for public schools in Philadelphia, and I won 3rd place. So the rug sculpture that I have in my hand, it's in my mom's basement somewhere. Every time I go home, I'm on the hunt for this thing because I treasure that thing, but she can't find it. So that was another story. Then here, this is where it was one of these types of jars of buttons, half full, just all kind of interesting buttons in the jar. And later on, my mom, she was big on upcycling, she was big on thrifting before that became a thing. And this was during the time when we were embarrassed to go in thrift shops and rummage sales and junk stores. So she would take my brother and myself to these places, and she would go in. We would say, "Oh no, we'll wait outside," because we didn't want to be seen. So one day I went with her, and it was raining, and I went inside, and then I really got the gist of what she was doing, because she was curating. She just wouldn't select anything. We would get clothing from there. We was getting little knickknacks and all kinds of things for the apartment. She would come home and clean it up. Just put her touch on it. So one day she brought this sweater home, and I decided to embellish the sweater with all these buttons she kept collecting from me. So this is where the journey started. This is my first piece that I did with buttons. I didn't have a technique. I didn't know what direction I was going in. I just enjoyed what I was doing. And this was 40 plus years ago. So I like to say that I'm addicted to buttons. This currently is in Fuller Craft Museum in Rockton, Massachusetts, in my retrospective. So I'm really, really proud of this. The first time I wore it out to a club, and I got a lot of response, and I said, I need to make another one, I'm getting all this attention. So, my neighbor wore this, my sister wore this, a couple other people in the family wore it. So it's one of my jewels. And like I said, at this time, I didn't have a technique. I was just randomly sewing buttons. This is where the slide, film, no, we deleted that. Next. Okay, this is a recent piece. This is, most of the work I do is on denim. Some of the pieces, they range from 5 pounds to 500 pounds or more. So this is my dedication to Chanel. So you see the black Chanel piping. And depending on what kind of buttons that I use, it depends on the topic, the theme. Here I'm using like childlike buttons. There's candy, there's kisses, there's all kind of like basketballs, soft colors. So there's 2 layers. There's the base layer. The base layer is the bottom layer. The bottom layer consists of uniform buttons. Mostly all the buttons are alike. And then the top layer are decorative buttons. And the decorative buttons, depending on what I'm working on, it helps me tell the story. Because the buttons have a language of their own. So depending on what the theme is, it depends on what I'm going to select in the piece. This is a close-up. Again, there's flies, back to the school bus, back to children and kids. This is a soda cap, hello. There's an American flag. Lots of other things. And there's a pencil in there. And then here is the interior. And I like the interior just as much as I like as the exterior, because the interior reminds me of spray paint. It reminds me of the constellations, and it reminds me of those little pencil mazes that thing. So I pride myself just as much as I do with the buttons on the outside as with the thread on the inside. And the thread is very important in the process, because there are a lot of times when people give me bags of dull, ugly, plain buttons. So the thread helps me elevate the button. So depending on what kind of thread you use, what color thread you use, it'll elevate the button. Like here, if I used gray or black, it would still be a dull button. But I decided to use orange to pull a color button. Same thing with here, you can't really see it. These are blue, but then I have shades of purple. Here, so it elevates the button. Like here, this is the perfect example. Blue buttons, blue thread. So you really don't see any contrast here. Then this is what you guys just saw downstairs. This is button armor. This is a form of protection for me, and then also I use this as an identifier because before I officially became an artist, I would go to galleries and art shows, and the artist would be in the room, and a lot of times I didn't know who the artist was. So when I officially became an artist, I started wearing buttons. So if you saw my work on display, you would say, "Oh, well, that's him right there, the guy with the buttons." So this is one of the first pieces that I would wear as an identifier and as protection, because being a shy person, this gave me comfort. When I couldn't start a conversation, people would come over to me and I would force myself to talk and speak about what I was wearing or what I was doing. So this morphs into several different things. As you can see, I have it on as a headpiece. I wear it as bracelets. It just depends on the mood and the particular day on what it'll turn into. So for elementary school, I went to Catholic school, which was really brutal for a sensitive kid. I have like a lot of horror and painful stories that I don't want to get into right now, but most of it was about punishment. So this chair is called ABCDEFU. So that's my nod to the nuns that I couldn't say to them as a 8-year-old, you know what I mean? So this is an actual crosshair. So what I'm really saying in the piece is that we were targets of abuse. So the least little thing we did, we got our knuckles beat with rulers and yardsticks. And in the rulers, there's quotes that I remember them saying to us. She would say, "Oh, don't you sass me," or "you old thing," or they would grab me by a jaw and just like, say it again. Like, it was just so cruel. I can understand it, like we were kids, we were doing things that kids do. And it took me quite some time to really recuperate from that. I remember my mother had us in therapy, and I didn't know why. But as I got older, I understood that she was trying to gradually take me through the next phase of my life. So that wasn't really good. So this is an actual school chair. These buttons are polywood, which those are faux wood buttons. As you can see, I have wads of bubble gum underneath the chair. And then the way I did the alphabets was like a kid. They not perfected. It was like, you know, you would see the carvings in the desk we would do like that. I think this took me 3 months to do. I've learned from a prior piece which we'll get to. I knew what I wanted to do, I just didn't know how to execute it. So I came up with this technique that I drilled probably like 200 holes through the chair. And then I sewed the fabric to the chair. And then I sewed the buttons to the fabric. This is a process that I continue to use till this day. This is the video that we're gonna start.
Is the bubble gum also buttons?
Yeah, pink bubble gum buttons. Then I learned later on that I could have buttons dyed. So I went and got some buttons dyed, bubblegum pink, for this piece. What
kind of
else?
fabric is that?
It's cotton. It's a cotton blend. So it's real strong. It's a cotton that's similar to denim. Most of the pieces that I use fabric. It has to be something really, really sturdy. Because if I make mistakes, I can go over it again, and I need something strong. And you know, denim is initially it's a work fabric. So I love to use denim, but not every piece requires denim. You know what I mean? And this, I think this was like a beige, heavy cotton fabric.
How long did it take you?
This one took me about 3 months. And even in the process of making a larger piece, a visual piece, it'll take from a day to maybe a month to get my rhythm going. I started, the worst part, not the worst part, but the part that I don't like about the process is the prep. Like I can sew buttons all day, all night, but the prep to sew the fabric, to drill the holes, to actually sew fabric to a chair or whatever it is that I'm using, that's nerve-wracking, right? And I have to be in a mood. I have to have a certain type of rhythm to keep going, So once the rhythm is going, I'm in it.
Is this like a cover or did you do it like individually?
No, all the buttons are hand sewn individually, right? So what I would do, I would cut the fabric, measure it out to the sections of the chair, and just literally sew it to the chair. So that may be 3 weeks alone, just to sew the fabric to the chair, right? Then I have to literally sew through the chair with the holes that I'm drilling to make sure it's secure. And then after I started sewing the buttons to the chair, it camouflages all of what's underneath, all the other stitches. It's very elaborate and it's a very tedious project. And I'm gonna take you through. We're doing this film now.
The button video.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever design any of the buttons? Like I know you said you found out you can dye them.
Yeah, the do-rags, which will come up in a minute. I had someone commission some buttons for me. No, I commissioned buttons for them. And depending on what I'm working on, if I can't find it, I have somebody make it for me. But it's probably 1 million buttons out in the atmosphere. And yeah, I haven't touched all of it. And it just keeps it interesting. Where am I at? You see I'm not literally with this.
I'll go ahead and play. The volume is a little low, so.
So this is from my retrospective.
Buttons are usually viewed as an everyday object serving the routine purpose of fastening one's clothes. But creative artist Beau McCall, through his wearable and visual artwork, inspires us to see buttons anew. In his hands, buttons are transformed into dazzling maximalist fashion statements and awe-inspiring sculptural objects. Buttons, small, humble, and rendered virtually invisible, become giant, powerful, and visually arresting when McCall transforms them with his unique artistic vision. He reveals the limitless potential of the button to captivate, provoke, inspire, and to tell stories of joy, strength, and beauty. Buttons On marks the first ever retrospective for McCall. Proclaimed by American Craft magazine as the Button Man, McCall creates wearable and visual art by hand sewing clothing buttons onto mostly upcycled fabrics, materials, and objects. Buttons On showcases pieces from McCall's nearly 40-year career, the debut of several new works, and select archival material. Organized into several themes, the exhibition explores McCall's mastery of the button and offers commentary on topics such as pop culture and social justice. The exhibition's 4 themes each represent a different facet of McCall's creative practice. They include buttons on the body, an exploration of nearly 40 years of button-embellished wearable art. Buttons on the mind, a survey of over 10 years of visual art created by using buttons as the primary medium. Buttons on the Soul, a collection of archival materials documenting McCall's career and evolution. And Buttons Off, a selection of items from McCall's forays into buttonless wearable and visual art. The exhibition also includes interactive elements and a pop-up library. Now, nearly 4 decades since his professional debut, McCall is receiving the recognition he deserves for his cultural contributions and command of the button in art. This retrospective aims to amplify McCall's legacy as an artist whose works are among the most original and innovative of our time. May this exhibition inspire you to put your buttons on. Curated by Solio and organized by Beth McLaughlin for Fuller Craft Museum.
That's very cool.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you. So those items of which you just saw was years and years and years of digging in dirty bags of buttons, trying to come up with new ideas on how to present and execute a button out of its natural function as a fastener. So I think with I've done a lot of group shows, and I think with me dealing with the button, I have an edge on a lot of folks because we all can identify with the button. When you see it, you immediately know what it is. So you could be a year old, 100 years old, you know it's a button. I think the way I'm presenting the button out of its content is fascinating for me, just to come up with all these different ideas and all these different techniques in how I utilize the button and how I'm continuing to move forward, because there's still a lot of things that I have notes on that I haven't explored yet on how to utilize this simple little everyday object that we all take for granted. You know, so today we're gonna make these button necklaces. They're very simple. After you learn how to make these, I want you guys to put like 10 or 20 of these on at the same time and go out and have some fun. Another thing that people don't realize about buttons is the sounds of buttons. They all have their own distinctive sounds. Plastic buttons make a sound, glass buttons, leather buttons, wood buttons, mother of pearl buttons. So I did an audio installation of all these different sounds, because as I'm creating and I'm digging, I hear this all day. All day, this is what I hear. And then after I thought about it, I thought it would be a good idea to experiment with the sounds of the buttons. So moving forward, I'm going to do more installations just dealing with the sound of a button. And even when we go out and we go to openings or what have you, they hear us coming. You know, so it's fun. Some of the works are very serious, but when you see my work, I want you to smile, and I want you to tap into your inner creative self and figure out what you can do with the button. Because a lot of times, like, you guys are sitting right here looking at me, and you look at these, and you'll say, oh, yeah, I got a box of buttons home, I'll give them to you. And then after they see this film, they say, oh, you know, on second thought, I'll try to do it myself. So that's what I want you to do, to be inspired, to come up with your own ideas on how you can utilize the button. In the beginning, it can be really inexpensive, but as I move forward, buttons can go from a nickel. I've seen buttons up to $100, $200. I interviewed somebody a couple months ago, and she told me she saw a button for $27,000. I don't know what that looks like, but you know, but it's really, really, really interesting, all the types of buttons that I've come across over the years. And hopefully these buttons will engage you the same way they are engaging me. So we're gonna get started. You guys ready?
Yes.
Okay.